when your scars become your superpower. Have you ever looked at a scar on your body and instinctively hidden it, covered it with makeup, clothing, or simply turned that part of yourself away from the world? What if I told you that the very things we're most desperate to conceal might actually be our greatest source of power? I recently had the profound privilege of interviewing Rabia Wood, a visionary whose work has fundamentally transformed how we understand personal pain and its redemptive potential. Her insights have sparked movements of authenticity that are reshaping professional spaces, particularly for those who have historically been silenced. Rabia isn't just another thought leader, she's a revolutionary who has helped thousands reclaim their stories and transform their wounds into wisdom. What struck me most about our conversation wasn't just the wisdom she shared, but how that wisdom has manifested in tangible, world changing initiatives that are dismantling systems of silence and shame. We live in a culture obsessed with perfection, smooth skin, flawless resumes, uninterrupted success stories. We've been conditioned to believe that our wounds disqualify us, that our failures diminish us, that our struggles should remain hidden behind carefully constructed facades of competence and composure. But what if we've been reading the story backward? What if those scars, both literal and metaphorical, aren't chapters to be erased, but rather the very source of our most authentic leadership? What if the moments that broke us are precisely what qualified us to heal others? This is the first profound truth Rabia emphasized. Your scars are your superpower. Let me share something remarkable that illustrates this principle. The Pink Parachute Diaries podcast emerged as a direct response to a troubling reality faced by Black professionals, particularly women. In corporate America and beyond, these talented individuals were being systematically pressured to compartmentalize themselves, to leave their full humanity at home and present only a sanitized, palatable version of themselves at work. The result? Isolation, self doubt, a pervasive sense that success required silence about one's struggles. I remember speaking with one of the podcast's earliest listeners, a marketing executive who had spent 15 years hiding her childhood in foster care. I was convinced, she told me, that if anyone knew where I came from, they would question whether I belonged in the boardroom. For years, she constructed elaborate stories to explain her lack of family photos on her desk, her absence at certain holiday functions, her hesitation when colleagues casually asked about her parents. But the founders of this podcast recognized something revolutionary. Those struggles weren't liabilities, they were assets. The very experiences that corporate culture demanded be hidden contained wisdom that could transform industries. So they created a space for honest storytelling rooted in faith, resilience, vulnerability, and gratitude. What happened next was extraordinary. Listeners didn't just feel seen, they felt empowered. The actionable insights shared through authentic stories led many to embrace their own narratives publicly for the first time. That marketing executive, she eventually shared her foster care experience during a company wide presentation on resilience and was approached afterward by three younger employees who had similar backgrounds but had been hiding them. A thriving community formed. Conversations shifted within industries. New approaches to leadership emerged. Approaches grounded not in pretending to be perfect, but in the healing power of honesty. This model demonstrated something profound. Vulnerability doesn't weaken professional culture, it transforms it. Connection happens not through our polished achievements, but through our shared humanity. And that humanity includes our wounds. The second truth Rabia emphasized cuts even deeper. Redemption rewrites. not erases. We often think healing means returning to who we were before the wound. But what if healing isn't about erasure but transformation? What if grace doesn't remove our past but repurposes it? Nahisha McCoy's story powerfully illustrates this principle. As featured on the Pink Parachute Diaries, McCoy challenged conventional wisdom that told Black professionals to compartmentalize their identity, to leave personal history at home. This advice, though well intentioned, left many feeling fundamentally unseen in their workplaces. McCoy's journey began with a devastating professional setback, a very public failure that industry insiders said would end her career. For months, she tried to distance herself from that chapter, to erase it from her professional narrative. But something wasn't working. The more she tried to separate herself from her failure, the less authentic her leadership became. The turning point came when she stopped trying to erase that chapter and instead began exploring how it had transformed her. How had that failure changed her approach to risk, to collaboration, to resilience? What wisdom had she gained that she couldn't have acquired any other way? McCoy advocated instead for intentional authenticity, using personal narrative not as something to overcome, but as a strategic asset for influence. Her approach helped reshape what success looks like by making authenticity central, not peripheral, to leadership development among marginalized groups. In traditionally exclusive corporate cultures where power structures favored assimilation over individuality, her method proved revolutionary. Black leaders began building communities around shared experience instead of isolation. Broader cultural shifts toward authentic leadership followed. Professional development norms were challenged industry wide as systems began valuing diverse stories as assets rather than liabilities. This is redemption at work, not erasing painful histories, but transforming them into catalysts for systemic change. The very experiences that once seemed to disqualify these professionals became their most powerful qualification for leadership. Healing, as Rabia emphasized, is active. Grace is powerful. And what we often perceive as wasted pain becomes, in time, our most profound purpose. But there's a third truth that ties everything together. You are called, not just comforted. Your story matters beyond inspiration. It's a call to action for yourself and others. You were rescued for a reason, to rise, lead, and ignite change in your community. Letitia Clark's work embodies this principle perfectly. After witnessing talented Black women silently exiting corporate America due to unspoken struggles, Clark didn't just offer sympathy, she launched a platform specifically designed to amplify their voices. The challenge was significant. These professionals were leaving organizations without acknowledgement because they feared sharing vulnerabilities would reinforce stereotypes or be used against them. The corporate setting demanded a kind of emotional invisibility from marginalized staff, a cycle Clark intentionally disrupted. Her solution was counterintuitive in our hustle culture. She paused. She embraced what she called the power of pause and built intentional space where vulnerability was protected rather than punished. Women found clarity through stillness instead of constant motion. They redefined success on their terms while supporting one another openly. One participant described the experience this way: for the first time, I wasn't just surviving my career, I was authoring it. I wasn't just managing my pain, I was metabolizing it into purpose. The impact rippled outward. Clark's initiative empowered dozens, eventually hundreds, who had previously suffered alone behind closed doors. Her work challenged toxic workplace norms industry wide by proving that pausing and telling hard truths is essential fuel for sustainable achievement among marginalized groups. This wasn't just about feeling better, it was about doing better, creating systems where others could thrive. It was about answering a call, not just receiving comfort. These three principles that our scars are our superpower, that redemption rewrites rather than erases, and that we are called rather than merely comforted, form a powerful framework for understanding how pain transforms into purpose. But here's where theory meets practice. Here's where inspiration becomes action. What would happen if we stopped hiding our scars? If we recognized that the chapters of our lives that carry shame or silence might actually be the very source of our strength and leadership when embraced and shared authentically? What would happen if we stopped trying to erase our painful past and instead allowed it to be rewritten into purpose? If we embrace the active nature of healing, the transformative power of grace, and the way God repurposes pain? And what would happen if we moved beyond seeking comfort to answering our call? If we recognize that our story matters beyond inspiration, that it's a call to action for ourselves and others? The examples I've shared from the Pink Parachute Diaries community show us the answer. Worlds change. Systems transform. People who have been silenced find their voice. And those voices create spaces where others can do the same. This isn't abstract theory. It's happening right now in boardrooms and community centers, in podcasts and platforms, wherever people have the courage to turn their wounds into wisdom and their pain into purpose. I want to challenge you today to embrace radical honesty about your own journey, even the chapters wrapped in shame or silence. Take one step today toward sharing that truth with someone else or using it as fuel for purposeful action within your sphere of influence. Begin seeing every scar as potential testimony, not something disqualifying, but something sacredly repurposed. Because here's what I know from my conversation with Rabia Wood and from the powerful examples of the Pink Parachute Diaries community. When we hide our scars, we hide our power. When we silence our stories, we silence our leadership. When we compartmentalize our pain, we compartmentalize our purpose. But when we embrace our full humanity, wounds and all, we become catalysts for healing far beyond ourselves. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more whole people, people who have integrated their pain into their purpose, their wounds into their wisdom, their scars into their strength. It needs you, not despite your scars, but because of them. So I leave you with this question, and I want you to sit with it long after our time together ends. What wound are you hiding that might actually be the world's healing? What scar are you concealing that might be someone else's salvation? What story are you silencing that might spark a revolution of authenticity? Your answer to that question could change everything, not just for you, but for all the people waiting for permission to embrace their own scars as superpowers. The world is waiting for you to show up fully, scars and all. Not tomorrow when you figured it all out, not next year when the pain has faded, but today in all your beautiful, broken, powerful humanity. Because your scars aren't just part of your story, they're the chapters that make it worth reading. They're not just what you survived, they're what you'll help others survive. They're not just your past, they're your purpose. And that purpose begins the moment you stop hiding and start healing, not just yourself, but a world desperate for the unique medicine that only your scars can provide.